யாதும் உரே யாவரும் கேடீர்.
செம்மொழி வலையொலி யூடியூப் சேனல். இந்த சேனலின் மூலமாக, அந்த வலையொலியின் மூலமாக பல்வேறு தகவல்களை தினந்தோறும் நாங்கள் வழங்கி கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய அந்த நிலையில் முழுமையாக கண்டு பார்க்கலாம்.
The title of this paper is F.W. Ellis as a Linguist, Translator and Critic. Francis White Ellis, who lived from 1777 to 1819, is one of the most neglected names in the annals of the history of British, French and German Indologists who have contributed to the study of Indian languages. It was in 1796 that as a young civilian he arrived in India and devoted himself passionately to the cause of political, social, religious and linguistic histories of the southern part of India. Though as a distinguished member of the Madras Civil Service he did superior work, his first love was language and he set out to learn the 4 main languages of the South as well as Sanskrit. He mastered them so well that he could write short treatises on Telugu, Malayalam and Tamil for the benefit of the students of the college at Fort St. George, which was founded mainly through his efforts. It is said that he had amassed a vast amount of material, the elaboration of which would have shed a flood of light on the still obscure history of South India, and likewise anticipated much of the knowledge of its philology and literature which recent researchers have brought to light. But these have not been unearthed till now, and what is more tragic is that he died prematurely in March 1819 during a brief sojourn at Ramnad, where he accidentally swallowed some poison. The Oriental Reading Room of New Bodleian Library, Oxford, has the manuscript called the Ellis Papers, given by the Reverend Dr. G.U. Pope, which on the first page mentions the original plan of F.W. Ellis as detailed below. Part the first on the natives by whom the Tamil language is spoken. Part the second on the Tamil language. Part the third on the Tamil literature. Part the fourth on the connection of things Tamil with other languages. Obviously, this challenging task couldn't be accomplished by him because of his untimely death, and the manuscript contains only the introduction to the contemplated book in addition to English renderings of a few more chapters of Tirukkural not included in his published work, an essay on the Hebrew syntax, and what are entitled an account of Prathaparudran Rayar, who reigned in the city of Orangal, a document in Canaries translated into English, and a facsimile of the copper grant belonging to the Jew of Cochin. This manuscript alone is enough to testify to his mastery of the 4 South Indian languages besides Hebrew and Sanskrit, and to his fascination with subjects South Indian, especially history, philology and literature. One is struck by the following observations on Tamil by Ellis. He says, the Tamil is basically connected with that family of languages of which the Hebrew, probably the most ancient, and the Arabic, certainly the most polished. The resemblance in terms includes some of most frequent occurrence and which in all languages are expressed by words of native derivation, appan and aman, or without the termination ab and are the same as Hebrew ab, Chaldaic ab, and the Arabic abu, the Hebrew and the Arabic amu. Among the various and excellent works in which the Tamil language abounds to a degree excelled by no Asiatic and by few European languages, none are more remarkable than what may be described as treating on the nature of human existence, the various natural forms and conditions of this life. He was most impressed with the Tamil didactic literature's concern for life here and now. Commenting on the Telugu script elsewhere, he observes, to give a just idea of the difficulties generally thought to be in the way of imitating the Telugu characters with the types, and clearly to point out the easy method of obviating them, it will in the first place be necessary to take a cursory review of the peculiarities of the Telugu alphabet. This statement is of course followed by a learned treatise on the Telugu letters. Another published work available at the Bodleian Library bears the following title on the front page: 3 treatises on Mirasi right by the late Francis W. Ellis, Collector of Madras, AD 1817. Blackburn, resident at Tanjore, 1804. Sir Thomas Munro, Governor of Madras, 1824, Madras. Printed by D.R.L.C. Connor at the Christian Knowledge Society's Press, Church Street, Veperi, 1852. This document may be fruitfully studied by experts in South Indian social history. Ellis's contribution, being the most substantial, examines not only the legal complexities relating to Mirasi right, but also the linguistic subtleties involved in expressing certain laws in English as well as in the South Indian languages, and includes authoritative observations on the usage of certain Tamil and Telugu words and on legal parlance. Robert Caldwell, in the introduction to his epoch-making comparative grammar of the Dravidian languages, makes a casual reference to the pioneering work done by Ellis, Stevenson and Hodgson. But as Thomas Trotman in his Kinship, Language and the Construction of South India observes, this is the observation made by Trotman, Caldwell hardly does justice to the accomplishment of his predecessors, especially to the very accomplished Francis White Ellis. It was Ellis and his association in Madras, in fact, who first proposed the ideas of a Dravidian language family on a very sound basis 40 years prior to Caldwell, and in the same year 1816 as Bob's famous pamphlet which launched the comparative philology of Indo-European. The great and deserved success of Caldwell's book has had the effect of throwing Ellis's earlier work into the shade, but there are other reasons for the limited historical appreciation of Ellis's scholarship as well. He died young and his papers were scattered after his death. Some of them, it is said, were used in the kitchen by the cook of a company grandee to kindle fires and singe chickens with. Contending that the construction of the concept of the Dravidian language family was the work of a Madras school of Orientalism that involved the collaboration of British and Indian scholars, Trotman traces the stages by which the concept took shape. The College of Fort St. George at Madras was created to teach the South Indian languages to young British recruits to the company's service. Ellis and his associates came to the conclusion that the Dravidian languages were related to one another but were not derived from Sanskrit. Having made a scientific study of the Indian languages, Ellis convincingly argued that the four languages were not derivations from the Sanskrit, that the latter, however it may contribute to their polish, is not necessary for their existence, and that they form a distinct family of languages with which the Sanskrit has, in later times especially, intermixed, but with which it has no radical connection. A paper of Ellis on Telugu grammar and Alexander Campbell's Grammar of the Telugu Language provided positive evidence for the contention that Telugu did not derive from Sanskrit. Campbell pointed out that the core vocabulary of Telugu, that is, the terms expressive of primitive ideas or things necessarily named in the earlier stages of society, including parts of the body, kinds of food and utensils in common use, parts of clothing, parts of the house and kinship terms, makes it clear that Telugu is at bottom a non-Sanskrit language, contrary to the claim of Colebrook and Carey. The paper by Ellis went further and showed that this non-Sanskritic core vocabulary of Telugu corresponds to similar non-Sanskritic Deshiya words in Tamil and Kannada, thus establishing the commonality of the three languages and their non-Sanskritic character. Also, his work provided the methodology for further investigation of the relationships among Indian languages and peoples. And Trotman rightly says, it would be difficult to overstate the difficulty and importance of this achievement, for the Dravidian languages are shot through with Sanskritic loans from 2 millennia of exposure to Sanskrit, and it is hard to see that this is a later accretion and not the groundwork of those languages. The critical methodological problem of the new linguistic science that was being constructed at Madras at the same time as it was being established in Europe by Bopp and Rask was to find a way to discriminate cognates from loan words, the former being the clues to the genealogical relations of languages to one another that the new science attempted to trace. Dr. Caldwell only confirmed what Ellis had established beyond all doubt 40 years earlier. Thomas R. Trotman, in his recent book Languages and Nations, The Dravidian Proof in Colonial Madras, a sequel to his earlier book Aryans and British India, treats as its central theme the conceptualization of the Dravidian family of South India by F.W. Ellis at Madras in 1816. The Dravidian proof demonstrating that the languages of South India are related to one another but are not derived from Sanskrit. Ellis rightly becomes the hero of this book, though the British and Indian scholars with whom he worked at the College of Fort St. George deservingly make their presence felt. A well-researched chapter called Ellis and his Circle presents the biographies of Ellis, collector of Madras and senior member of the College of Fort St. George, his brainchild, as well as of his associates William Erskine, John Leyden, A.D. Campbell, Pattabhirama Shastri, the leading headmaster at the college, and Sankarayya, Ellis's Sheristadar. It was during the first 2 decades of the 19th century, which Trotman calls Ellis's era in Madras, that the government of Madras was actively interested in investigating the languages of South India and in promoting the publication of grammars and dictionaries. Ellis was earnestly involved in the task of providing collectors and judges with language training. It was he who, virtually creating the College of Fort St. George with the objective of giving instruction to young civil servants, served as the head of its board of superintendents. During his 2-decade-long career in India, he served as assistant under the Secretary to the Board of Revenue, Deputy Secretary to the Board of Revenue, Secretary to the Board of Revenue 1802, Judge and Magistrate of the Zilla of Masulipatnam, Collector of Land Customs and Collector of Madras in 1810. Erskine's description of Ellis' scholarship and of his love for Tamil and the Tamils is worth cherishing. This is what Erskine says. Ellis was remarkable for the proficiency he had made in the various languages of southern India and for his thorough acquaintance with the manners, customs and literatures of the Hindus. He is said to have written the Tamil with great elegance and was a poet in that tongue. He was eager to improve the condition of the natives, but had perhaps too high an opinion of their literature and acquirements. He lived much among the natives and had a perfect knowledge of their habits of thinking. Had Erskine lived longer, he would have realized that Ellis was a very discerning critic and a linguistic genius who could justly estimate both the language and literature of the Tamils, and that his sympathy for the much maligned Tamils was not misplaced. Apart from identifying Ellis's eccentricities, Erskine was able to understand the intellectual potential that his colleague possessed. Erskine again says, he was very learned and ingenious, but shy, irritable, proud and obstinate. His peculiarities were injurious only to himself. He was an excellent and attached friend, liberal to his servants and dependents, and had his mind even open to conviction. He was an excellent classical scholar, and his ideas on the accent and prosody of the ancient languages derived from his study of Sanskrit and other languages seemed to me new and ingenious. His death was an irreparable loss to Indian literature, especially at Madras.